Commander Alex Mercer sat in the cold, dark room. The only light came from the screens in front of him. He looked tired. He had not slept in 3 days. Outside this bunker, the world was burning. For 3 months, the aliens had attacked Earth. They called themselves the Vorgith. To Alex, they were just monsters. The Vorgith ships were huge. They blocked out the sun. Their metal hulls were dark and shiny. They flew in the sky like angry gods. They did not talk to humans. They did not want peace. They only wanted resources. They took water, metals, and people. Yes, they took people. Alex saw the videos. The giant ships used beams of light to lift thousands of people into the sky. They treated humans like cattle. It made Alex sick, but he could not vomit anymore. He had nothing left in his stomach. High above the planet, on the main Vorgith ship, Overseer Gore stood on a tall platform. He was tall, with purple skin and black eyes. He looked down at his second-in-command. Gore felt happy. The invasion was too easy. The humans fought back at first, but their weapons were weak. Their missiles broke against the Vorgith shields. Their tanks melted under plasma fire. "The planet is secure," Gore said. His voice was deep and cold. "These creatures are soft. They break easily." The second-in-command nodded. "Yes, Overseer. The resistance is gone. The last armies hid in the mountains, but we found them. The harvest will be complete in 2 cycles." Gorth laughed. It was a dry, scratching sound. "I expected more of a fight." The galaxy spoke of humans. They said humans were violent and clever. But I see nothing. I see only fear. Gorth did not know the truth. He did not know what Alex Mercer was doing in the bunker. The Vorgith thought they had won. They thought the war was over. They thought Earth was just another mine for them to use. In the bunker, Alex looked at a red button on his desk. It was not a normal button. It was connected to a secret network. For years, even before the aliens arrived, the governments of Earth prepared. They knew that one day, something might come from the stars. They built a weapon. It was not a shield to protect cities. It was a sword to kill the enemy. Alex remembered the meetings. The leaders said, "If we lose, we cannot let them keep the planet. We cannot let them enslave us. We must make them regret coming here." The plan was called Protocol Zero. Alex looked at the young soldier next to him. His name was David Kim. David was only 20 years old. He held a rifle and shook a little. He looked at Alex with wide eyes. "Sir, is it time?" David asked. His voice was quiet. Alex nodded slowly. "Yes, David, it is time." "Will it work?" David asked. "The ships, there are so many of them." "The weapon does not care about numbers," Alex said. "It eats metal. It eats circuits. It eats everything." Alex took a deep breath. He pressed the red button. Nothing happened in the bunker. The lights did not flicker. The sound did not change. But outside, the ground began to move. In the deserts of Nevada, the tundras of Siberia, and the deep jungles of the Amazon, hidden silos opened. These silos were old and covered in dirt. They had been forgotten by the Vorgith sensors. The sensors looked for energy signatures and heat. These silos were cold and dark until now. Thousands of small, black rockets launched into the sky. They did not fly fast. They did not make loud roaring noises like old nuclear missiles. They flew silently, leaving trails of white smoke. They looked like a swarm of bees rising from the earth. On the Vorgith ship, the alarm started to ring. A soldier ran to Gorth. "Overseer," the soldier shouted. "We detect launches from the surface. Thousands of projectiles." Gorth looked at the screen. He saw the swarm of black dots rising. He laughed again. "Missiles? How primitive. Shoot them down." The Vorgith ships turned their big guns toward the sky. They fired bright beams of plasma. The beams hit the black rockets. The rockets exploded. Gorth smiled. "See? They are throwing rocks at us. It is pathetic." But Gorth did not see everything. There were too many rockets. The Vorgith guns could shoot down hundreds, even thousands. But there were millions. The rockets were small and cheap. They were made of simple materials. For every rocket that exploded, 10 more passed through the defense grid. The rockets reached the upper atmosphere. They did not explode. They did not detonate. Instead, they opened up. Inside, each rocket was a canister. The canisters popped open, releasing a gray dust. The dust floated in the vacuum of space. It was silent. It was deadly. This dust was not dirt. It was nanobots, microscopic machines. They were called threshers. They were programmed to do one thing: find metal and eat it. They would replicate, making more of themselves as long as they had metal. The gray cloud floated toward the Vorgith fleet. It looked like a fog. Gore saw it on the screen. He tilted his head. "What is that cloud?" he asked. "Debris?" "It appears to be debris from the destroyed missiles, Overseer," the sensor officer said. "It is drifting toward the hull." "Let it hit the shields," Gore said. "It is harmless." The gray dust touched the energy shields of the Vorgith ships. The shields flared blue, but the nanobots were smart. They did not try to break the shields with force. They found the frequency of the shield generators. They attached themselves to the shield emitters on the hulls. The shields flickered and died. The dust slipped through the cracks and landed on the metal skin of the giant ships. At first, nothing happened. The dust sat there. But then, the eating began. On a small transport ship near the edge of the fleet, a mechanic heard a strange noise. It sounded like hissing. He looked at the wall. The metal was bubbling. It looked like acid was eating it. But there was no acid. It was just the gray dust. The metal was turning into liquid. The gray dust was growing. It was moving. The mechanic screamed, "Help! The wall is bleeding." He ran, but the dust moved faster. It flowed like water over the floor. It touched his boots. The metal in his boots dissolved. Then it touched his legs. The mechanic fell to the ground. He tried to stand, but his legs were gone. The dust did not care about flesh. It wanted the metal in his blood, the iron in his veins. He dissolved into the gray pool. The alarm on the bridge of the transport ship turned red. "Hull breach. Hull breach. Section 4 is gone." In the bunker, Alex watched the screens. The satellites showed the Vorgith ships. One by one, small red dots appeared on the ships. The dots grew larger. "Report," Alex said. His voice was steady. David looked at the data. "The threshers have made contact. The shield generators are failing. They are entering the ventilation systems." Alex leaned back in his chair. "Good." High above, Gorth was not laughing anymore. His ship began to shake. The lights flickered. "What is happening?" Gorth roared. "Why is the ship shaking?" "Overseer," the sensor officer yelled. His voice was full of fear. "The debris, it is alive. It is eating the ship. Our hull plating is dissolving in Sector 7. Eating? That is impossible." Gorth slammed his fist on the railing. "Fire at the cloud. Blow it away." The ship tried to fire its guns, but the gun turrets were covered in the gray dust. The metal twisted and snapped. The guns fell silent. The ship was defenseless. On the bridge, the lights went out completely. The emergency red lights came on. Through the windows, Gore could see the other ships in the fleet. They were glowing, not with light, but with heat. The nanobots were eating the metal so fast that it created friction. The ships were turning into sludge. He saw a large cruiser nearby. Its engines exploded. The ship broke in half. The broken pieces did not float in space. They melted. The gray dust consumed everything. It was a silent storm. Gore felt fear for the first time in his life. He looked at the small blue planet below them. He thought it was a sheep. He was wrong. It was a wolf in sheep's clothing. "Get us out of here." Gore screamed. "Jump to hyperspace. Now!" "We can't," the pilot shouted. "The navigation computer is eaten. The drive is melting. We are stuck." In the bunker, Alex Mercer watched the chaos. He saw the Vorgith fleet falling apart. The giant ships, symbols of power, were turning into gray clouds of waste. "Sir," David said. He was looking at the main screen. "Look at the harvesting ships. The ones holding the people." Alex looked. The harvesting ships were also covered in the dust. They were breaking apart. The humans inside, they would not survive. The ships were crashing into the atmosphere. Alex felt a pain in his chest. The counterattack was brutal. It killed everyone, human and alien alike. That was the point. There was no clean way to win this. The Vorgith had to be destroyed completely. "May God forgive us," Alex whispered. He stood up. "Prepare the ground teams. When the big ships fall, the smaller ones will land. We have to hunt the survivors." David nodded. He looked scared, but he picked up his rifle. He knew there was no going back. The galaxy had thought Earth was weak. They had thought humans were soft. Alex looked at the screen one last time. A Vorgith dreadnought, the size of a city, was crumbling. It looked like a sandcastle hit by a wave. The silence of space was filled with the death of an empire. "Earth fights back," Alex said to the empty room, "and we will not stop until the sky is clear." The first part of the war was over. The Vorgith had come to take the planet, but they had not expected the farmers to set the field on fire. The counterattack had begun, and it was merciless. The galaxy would soon learn that you do not poke a sleeping giant unless you are ready to be eaten. The gray dust moved like a living fog in the blackness of space. It was silent and fast. It swirled around the great Vorgith ships, sticking to the metal hulls. To the Vorgith, metal was strong. It was the bones of their ships. But to the small nanobots, metal was food. High above Earth, the Vorgith fleet was in chaos. The alarms on the ships screamed without stopping. Red lights flashed in every room, casting long, scary shadows on the walls. The aliens ran through the corridors. They pushed each other and shouted. They were soldiers, but now they looked like scared children. On the bridge of the main ship, Overseer Gorth gripped the railing so hard that his claws bent the metal. He watched the main view screen in horror. The image showed the outside of the ship. The gray dust was covering the windows. The thick, strong glass was starting to crack. Tiny lines appeared on the surface like spider webs. "Report," Gorth roared. His voice shook with anger and fear. "Stop this dust. Use the force fields." A Vorgith officer at the control panel typed with shaking fingers. "The force fields are gone, Overseer. The dust ate the generators. We have no shields." "Then shoot it," Gorth yelled. "Use the point defense cannons." "We tried." The officer cried out. "The cannons are gone too." The barrels melted away. Gorth looked down at his hands. He felt helpless. He was the leader of the most powerful fleet in the sector, but he could not fight a cloud of dust. The humans had not fought with honor. They had not fought with soldiers or ships. They had fought with disease that ate metal. Deep inside the Vorgith ships, the horror was growing. The nanobots did not just eat the outside. They found small holes. They crawled into air vents. They slipped through cracks in the doors. Once inside, they spread quickly. In the lower decks, where the Vorgith soldiers slept, the nightmare began. A soldier named Vrex was putting on his armor. He heard a hissing sound. He looked at the locker where he kept his gun. The locker was made of steel. It was bubbling. The gray sludge dripped down onto the floor. Where it touched the metal floor, it smoked. Vrex stepped back. He reached for his gun, but the locker collapsed into a pile of gray liquid. His gun was gone, dissolved into the dust. Then the dust moved toward his boots. Vrex screamed. He kicked the dust, but it splashed up his leg. The tiny robots began to eat the metal armor on his shin. "Help me!" Vrex shouted. "It is eating me!" Other soldiers ran to help, but they stopped when they saw the dust. It was moving like a flood across the floor. It was coming from the walls. The entire room was being digested. The soldiers turned and ran. They scrambled over each other, trying to escape the gray death. In the Earth's atmosphere, the scene was different but just as scary. Lieutenant David Kim sat in the cockpit of his old fighter jet. The plane was a mess. It had bullet holes and burn marks, but it still flew. David was part of the last squadron. They had a job to do. David looked at his radar screen. It was full of red dots. The Vorgith ships that were not destroyed were trying to escape. They were dropping down into the atmosphere to fly away from the nanobots in space. "They are coming down," David said into his radio. "Everyone, stay sharp. We're the distraction." "Copy that, Lieutenant," a voice replied. It was Captain Miller, the leader of the squadron. "Remember, we do not need to destroy them. We just need to annoy them. We need to keep them here." David knew the plan. The nanobots could not follow the ships into the deep atmosphere very well. The air was too thick, and the wind would blow the dust away. But if the Vorga ships landed, the humans on the ground could use other weapons to finish them. The job of the pilots was to make sure the aliens could not land safely. David's jet shook as a beam of green plasma shot past his wing. A Vorgith fighter ship was behind him. The alien ship was fast and sleek. It looked like a silver dart. Braking left. David shouted. He pulled the control stick hard. The jet rolled to the side. The green beam missed his engine by inches. I can't shake him, David said. Hold on, David, Miller said. I am on your tail. Miller's jet dived from above. He fired a volley of missiles. The missiles were old human technology, but they worked. They exploded against the Vorga fighters' shields. The alien ship spun out of control and crashed into a mountain below. Good shot, Miller, David said. He leveled his jet and looked up. The sky was dark with smoke. Large pieces of burning Vorga ships were falling like shooting stars. The nanobots had eaten the big ships until they broke apart. Up in space, Gorth watched his fleet die. The main view screen went black. The gray dust had covered the camera lens. The bridge was now dark, lit only by the red emergency lights. Overseer, a soldier yelled. The hull is breached in Sector 4. The air is venting into space. Gorth turned to his pilot. Take us down. Land on the planet. We have to get away from this dust. The pilot struggled with the controls. The engines are failing. The dust is eating the fuel lines. Gorth ran to the pilot. He pushed the pilot aside and grabbed the controls himself. Move. I will fly this ship. Gorth was a good pilot. He forced a damaged ship to turn. The massive flagship groaned under the stress. Metal twisted and screeched. The ship pointed its nose toward the blue and green planet below. It began to fall. As the ship entered the atmosphere, the heat shield started to burn. But the heat shield was full of holes from the nanobots. Fire began to lick at the side of the ship. The bridge shook violently. Hold on, Gorth screamed. The flagship fell through the clouds. It was a giant fireball. People on the ground looked up. They saw the alien ships burning. For 3 months, they had lived in fear. They had hidden in holes and basements. Now, they saw the masters of the sky falling. It was a sign of hope. In the bunker, Alex Mercer watched the radar. He saw the large blip of the Vorga flagship dropping fast. He is coming down, Alex said to Sarah Miller. Target the landing zone. Sarah typed on her keyboard. We have teams ready. But Alex, the nanobots are still on his ship. If he lands, the dust will spread on the ground. I know, Alex said. It is a risk, but we have to finish him. The Vorga flagship crashed. It hit the ground in a flat plain in the middle of what used to be the United States. The impact was like a bomb. A cloud of dirt and fire rose miles into the air. The ground shook for miles around. Trees fell over. Buildings collapsed. The ship skid across the grass, tearing a deep scar in the earth. Finally, it stopped. It was broken and smoking. Fires burned all over the hull. David Kim flew his jet over the crash site. He looked down at the giant ruined ship. Wow, he whispered. We actually did it. Don't celebrate yet. Miller's voice came over the radio. Look near the nose. There's a hatch opening. David looked. A door on the side of the crashed ship was opening. Smoke and steam came out. Small figures ran out. They were Vorga soldiers. They were setting up a perimeter. They are alive, David said. They are surviving. They are tough, Miller said. But they are trapped. The nanobots are still eating their ship. They have nowhere to go. Inside the crashed ship, Gorth crawled out of the broken bridge. He was bleeding. His arm was broken. He looked around. His beautiful ship was a wreck. The walls were melting. The gray dust was everywhere, eating the metal slowly. Gorth felt hate. He hated the humans. He hated their dust. He looked at the soldiers waiting for him. We will make them pay, Gorth growled. We may die, but we will take this planet with us. But outside, the humans were already moving. Tanks and trucks were driving across the plain toward the crash site. Soldiers in black armor marched forward. They carried strange weapons. They were not afraid anymore. The counterattack was brutal, and it was not over. The humans had knocked the giants down to the ground. Now, they were going to stomp on them until nothing moved. The silence of space was gone. Now, there was only the noise of war, the roar of fires, and the sound of humanity coming back to claim their home. The news of the Vorgid defeat traveled faster than light. In the center of the galaxy, the Galactic Council met in a great hall made of crystal and light. This place was far away from Earth. It was a place of peace and law. The most powerful species in the galaxy sat there. They were old and wise. They had watched the Vorgid invade Earth, but they did nothing. They thought Earth was too weak to matter. They were wrong. In a quiet room on the Council planet, a Vorgid leader named Counselor Vane sat in front of a communication screen. His face was pale. His hands shook as he adjusted the controls. He was listening to the final logs from the fleet. The audio was full of screaming. Vane heard the voices of his friends dying. It eats the ship, a voice cried out. My legs, the gray dust. Then came the sound of Overseer Gorth. They are monsters. They are not soft. They are death. Vane turned off the screen. He could not listen anymore. He looked up at the ceiling. He felt cold. The Vorgith were a strong race. They had conquered many worlds. They took resources and slaves. But they had never seen anything like this. The humans did not fight with honor. They fought with a hunger. Counselor Vane stood up and walked to the main council chamber. The other members were already there. There was a tall insect creature named Xyler. There was a water being named Aquos. They looked at Vane with sad eyes. They already knew what happened. It is true, Xyler asked. His voice clicked like a beetle. The fleet is gone? Gone, Vane said. His voice was flat. Destroyed, not by weapons, by dust. Small machines that eat metal. They ate our ships. They ate our people. The humans call them threshers. The room was silent. The council members were afraid. They had technology, but they relied on metal. Their ships, their cities, their tools were all made of metal. If the humans had a weapon that could eat metal, then no one was safe. What do they want? Aquos asked. Why did they do this? Vane laughed. It was a sad, tired sound. They did not want to talk. They did not want to trade. They just wanted us dead. We went there to take their planet. We thought they were sheep, but they were wolves hiding in sheep's clothing. Meanwhile, on Earth, the mood was different. The humans were not celebrating in the streets. There were no parties. The cities were still ruins. The sky was full of smoke. But the people who were left were alive. They were angry. Sarah Miller stood in the main control room of the bunker. She was tired. Her eyes were red from staring at screens for too long. She watched a live video feed from the crash site. The giant Vorgith flagship sat in the middle of the plain, broken and smoking. But it was not quiet yet. The dust is working, Sarah said to Alex Mercer. It is still eating the ship, but it is slow now. The air is thick. The nanobots cannot move as fast in the wind. Alex stood behind her. He looked at the map on the wall. Red dots showed where human troops were moving. They were surrounding the crash site. It does not need to be fast, Alex said. It just needs to keep them trapped. They cannot fix their ship. They cannot fly away. They are sitting ducks. Sarah looked at the data. The Vorgith are sending out a distress signal. It is strong. It is going deep into space. Let them call, Alex said. Let anyone come who wants to die. Sarah turned her chair to face him. Alex, the galaxy is listening. Other races will hear this. They will know what we did. We use a weapon that eats everything. We kill the invaders, yes, but we also kill the humans they captured. The prisoners were on those ships when the dust hit. Alex looked down at the floor. He knew this. He knew that when the nanobots ate the Vorgith transport ships, they ate the human prisoners too. It was a heavy burden. It was a terrible choice. But Alex knew that if he hesitated, all humans would be slaves or dead. It was the only way, Alex said softly. We could not save them. We could only avenge them. We had to burn the house down to kill the robbers inside. Sarah nodded. She turned back to her screen. The dust is adapting. It is getting better at eating. The Vorgith are trying to shoot it, but the dust is too small. It slips through the cracks. Outside the bunker, the world was changing. The alien ships that had hovered over the city for months were now falling. They burned up in the atmosphere or crashed into the ocean. The gray dust followed them. Where the ships landed, the dust formed gray pools. Nothing grew in those pools. The metal of the ships turned into liquid, then into gray sludge, then into nothing. In the Galactic Council chamber, the argument started. Some members wanted to help the Vorgith. Some wanted to destroy Earth before the humans could spread. "We must send a fleet," Xyler shouted. "We must bomb this planet from space. We must glass it over. If these humans have this technology, they will use it on us next. We cannot glass a planet with billions of souls," Aquos argued. "That is against the galactic law. We must talk to them." "Talk to them?" Vane slammed his fist on the table. "They do not talk. They eat. I listened to the logs. They did not ask for surrender. They just pushed a button and watched us die. They are brutal. They are savage." The Council realized that Earth was not a normal planet. Earth was a trap. For years, humans had watched the stars. They saw the wars. They saw the strong races bullying the weak. They knew they could not win a fair fight. So they cheated. They built a weapon that broke the rules. "They are worse than the Vorgith," a council member whispered. "The Vorgith want to rule. The humans want to erase." Back in the bunker, a light flashed on Sarah's console. "Alex, look at this. The nanobots are finished with the small ships. They are clumping together." "What does that mean?" Alex asked. "They are forming a cloud," Sarah explained. "A big gray cloud. It is drifting toward the remaining Vorgith ships. It looks intelligent, like it is hunting." Alex felt a chill. The weapon was working too well. The nanobots were just machines, but they were programmed to survive. To survive, they had to eat. And they had eaten the entire invasion fleet. Now, they were hungry for more. "Can we stop them?" Alex asked. Sarah shook her head. "No. Once they are deployed, they do not stop until there is no metal left. We have a kill switch, but it only works if they receive the signal. The dust is blocking the signal. We lost control, Alex." Alex stared at the screen. The humans had unleashed a plague to kill the invaders. But now the plague might not stop. It might eat everything on Earth. Cars, bridges, weapons, even the buildings. "We will worry about that later," Alex said, his voice hardening. "First, we make sure the aliens on the ground never leave. Send the order to the ground troops. Attack." On the plain, the human army moved forward. They wore special suits to protect them from the dust. They carried guns that shot energy beams, reverse-engineered from alien tech. The Vorgith soldiers were dug in around their crashed flagship. They shot green plasma into the dark. The human soldiers moved like ghosts. They used the smoke and the dust as cover. One human soldier, named Tom, fired his weapon. A beam of blue light hit a Vorgith soldier. The alien fell. Tom did not cheer. He just moved forward. He stepped over a piece of gray sludge that used to be a tank. He kept his eyes on the prize. The crashed ship loomed ahead. It was huge, even broken. Fires burned inside it. The gray dust crawled over the hull, eating it layer by layer. The galaxy watched in silence. The audio feeds from the Vorgith helmet cameras went out one by one. The last thing the council heard was the sound of human boots marching on metal grating and the hiss of the gray death. The council sat in the bright room, far away, and they were afraid. They realized that humanity was not a new member of the galaxy. Humanity was a warning, and the silence that followed was a silence of terror. The humans had shown that they would rather destroy the world than lose it, and that made them the most dangerous thing in the stars. The Vorgith flagship lay broken in the middle of the plain. It was a massive mountain of twisted metal and fire. Smoke rose high into the sky, blocking the sun. The gray dust, the threshers, covered the ship like a blanket. It hissed loudly as it ate through the alien hull. To the aliens inside, the sound was like a million snakes. Inside the ship, the lights flickered and died. Emergency red lights bathed the corridors in a bloody glow. Vrak, a Vorgith ground commander, ran through the hallway. He breathed hard. His purple skin was covered in sweat and dirt. He held a plasma rifle, but he knew it was useless against the dust. "Move!" Vrock shouted to the soldiers behind him. We must reach the escape shuttles. The ship is dying. The soldiers ran with him. They were scared. They had never seen anything like this. The metal walls were bubbling and melting. The floor was slippery with gray sludge. One soldier slipped and fell. His leg landed in a puddle of the gray dust. He screamed as the nanobots ate his armor and then his flesh. The other soldiers jumped over him. They did not stop. They were terrified that they would be next. Vrock reached the hangar bay. The big doors were closed. He ran to the control panel. His fingers shook as he typed the code. The doors groaned and opened slowly. Dust fell from the top of the door frame. It landed on Vrock's shoulder. He brushed it off quickly, burning his hand. Inside the hangar, 3 shuttles sat ready. Engineers were running around, trying to prepare them for launch. Vrock ran to the main shuttle. He grabbed the pilot by the throat. Is this ship ready? Vrock demanded. The pilot nodded, his eyes wide. Yes, Commander, but the navigation system is damaged. The dust ate the antenna. Just fly. Vrock pushed the pilot toward the cockpit. Get us off this rock. Vrock turned to the soldiers waiting to board. Get in, all of you. We leave now. The soldiers rushed up the ramp. Vrock stood at the bottom, counting them. There were too many. The shuttle was small. It could not hold everyone. The soldiers looked at Vrock with pleading eyes. They wanted to live. There is no room, Vrock said coldly. The rest of you find the other shuttles. The soldiers left behind screamed in anger and fear. Vrock did not care. He ran up the ramp and slammed the close button. The shuttle door hissed shut. Through the small window, Vrock saw the soldiers running toward the other shuttles. Suddenly, the far wall of the hangar exploded. Gray dust poured into the room like a waterfall. It moved fast. It covered the floor. The soldiers near the wall didn't even have time to scream. They vanished into the gray cloud. Go! Go! Vrock screamed into the intercom. The shuttle's engines roared. The ship lifted off the ground. It flew toward the hangar doors. As it passed out of the ship, Vrock looked down. The gray dust was everywhere. It was filling the hangar. The other shuttles were not fast enough. The dust covered them. He saw the metal hulls of the other shuttles dissolve. They fell apart and crashed back to floor. Vrock's shuttle shot out into the open air. He felt safe for a moment. They were flying away from the death trap. But then, the shuttle shook violently. What is happening? Vrock ran to the cockpit. The controls! The pilot yelled. They are not responding. The steering is locked. Vrock looked at the screen. It showed a picture of the sky, but the picture was spinning. The shuttle was not climbing. It was turning. Hack the system. Vrock shouted. Override it. I can't, the pilot cried. The code, it is rewriting itself. It is human code. Vrock froze. He understood. The humans had not just used dust. They had used a computer virus too. The nanobots were not just eating the ship. They were talking to the ship's computers. They were taking control. The shuttle turned in a wide circle. It was not flying away. It was flying back. No, Vrock whispered. No. Outside on the ground, a team of humans watched the shuttle. Alex Mercer stood by a black Jeep. He wore a heavy coat to protect against the wind. He held a small tablet. Are you doing that? David Kim asked, standing next to him. He pointed his rifle at the sky. Alex tapped the screen. Yes, the dust is inside their shuttle. It ate the antenna. Now it is telling the shuttle where to go. Where are you sending it? David asked. Alex looked up. The shuttle was flying low over the plain. It was heading straight toward the crashed flagship. Home, Alex said. Inside the shuttle, Vrock watched in horror. The flagship grew larger and larger in the window. The shuttle was diving straight into the burning wreck of the mother ship. Pull up. Vrock hit the pilot. Pull up. I am trying. It will not let me. The shuttle slammed into the side of the flagship. There was a massive explosion. Fire and metal flew into the air. The shuttle was gone. Vrock was gone. The last hope of the Vorgith ground forces was gone. Alex lowered the tablet. Target destroyed. David looked at him. That was brutal, sir. They started it. Alex said. I finished it. Alex turned to his team. Load up. We are going in. I want to be on that bridge before the fire goes out. The human team moved out. They drove jeeps and armored trucks toward the crash. The gray dust moved aside for them. The nanobots were programmed to ignore human DNA and specific human frequencies. To the dust, the humans were invisible. The humans walked through the gray fog that had killed the aliens. They reached the side of the flagship. A hole had been blasted in the hull. The team climbed inside. It was hot. The air smelled like burning plastic and ozone. Alex led the way. His boots crunched on the metal grating. They walked through the corridors. It was a tomb. Dead Vorgus soldiers lay everywhere. Some had been shot, but most had been eaten by the dust. Their armor was gone. Their weapons were piles of rust. Only their bones remained. They reached the bridge. The door was melted open. Alex stepped inside. The bridge was a mess. Screens were shattered. Wires hung from the ceiling like vines. In the center of the room, a console still sparked with electricity. Alex walked to the console. He pulled a small device from his pocket. It looked like a black box with wires. He plugged it into the console. Sarah, Alex spoke into his radio. I am in. Uploading the virus now. Good, Alex. Sarah's voice came back. Make sure it takes the navigation system. We need this ship to fly one last time. The screen on the console flickered. Green lines of code scrolled down. The alien language was replaced by human numbers. The ship groaned. The metal around them shifted. Hurry up, Alex, David said. He looked at the ceiling. The structural integrity is failing. This ship could fall apart any second. Almost there, Alex said. Done. Alex unplugged the black box. Let's go. We have 5 minutes to get clear. The team ran back the way they came. They moved fast. They climbed out of the hole in the hull and jumped back into their vehicles. Alex slammed his foot on the gas. The jeep sped away from the giant wreck. They drove a mile away and stopped. Alex got out and turned around. Watch, he said. On the plane, the broken Vorga flagship began to move. It did not look like it could fly, but it tried. The engines, half-eaten by dust, roared to life. Blue flames shot out from the back. The ship lifted slowly. It wobbled in the air. Inside the ship, the virus was in control. It did not care about safety. It had one mission. The ship aimed its nose upward. It pointed straight up toward the blackness of space. The ship climbed faster and faster. It broke through the clouds. It rose into the upper atmosphere. The air got thinner. The ship shook as it pushed against gravity. In the bunker, Sarah watched the radar. Altitude is rising. It is entering the stratosphere. The ship continued to climb. It left the blue sky behind and entered the darkness of space. The gray dust that covered the ship froze in the cold vacuum, but the virus kept the engines burning hot. The ship flew past the wreckage of the other Vorgus ships. It flew past the debris field. It was heading for the sun. Target lock confirmed, Sarah said. Alex watched through a pair of binoculars. He could see a tiny star in the sky, getting brighter. It was a ship burning like a meteor. Goodbye, Alex whispered. The Vorga flagship, once the pride of their fleet, dove into the sun. The heat was intense. The metal melted instantly. The ship vaporized. There were no survivors. There was nothing left. The last of the invasion force was gone. The sky was clear of alien ships. The gray dust, having run out of metal to eat in the upper atmosphere, began to drift down slowly. It would fall harmlessly into the ocean or onto the ground, where it would shut down. Alex lowered the binoculars. He looked at his team. They were dirty, tired, and alive. The counterattack was over. Earth had won. But as Alex looked at the empty sky, he felt a heavy weight in his chest. They had survived, but they had crossed a line. They had used a weapon that terrified even them. The galaxy was watching now, and the silence of stars felt heavier than before 1 year passed. The sky over Earth was blue again. The smoke from the fires was gone. The cities were still broken, but the people were rebuilding. The alien ships that once blocked the sun were now just memories. However, the world felt different. It was quieter. The people worked hard, But they did not smile much. They knew what they were capable of now. They knew the darkness that lived inside them, far away from Earth. In a different part of the galaxy, the Galactic Council met again. This time, the meeting was not in the bright crystal hall. They met in a small, dim room. The mood was serious. The great leaders of the galaxy were afraid. Emissary Kale sat at a round table. He represented a peaceful race of traders. He looked at the hologram in the center of the table. It showed a map of the Milky Way galaxy. A small red dot marked the Sol system, where Earth was located. "We have reviewed the data," Kale said. His voice was soft but tense. "The Vorgith fleet is gone. Not just defeated. Gone. Destroyed completely. No survivors." Next to him sat an alien historian known as a Record Keeper. The Record Keeper had a large head and small eyes. He had watched thousands of years of history. He had seen empires rise and fall. But he had never seen anything like the data from Earth. "The Vorgith were powerful," the Record Keeper said. "They had thousands of ships. They had shields that could stop nuclear bombs. Yet a small young planet destroyed them in a few days." He paused. "They did not use better ships. They did not use bigger guns. They used a swarm. They used a weapon that eats. It is a terrifying way to fight." Another council member slammed a fist on the table. It was a reptilian creature named Seraph. "We should destroy them now, before they turn that weapon on us. If they can eat the Vorgith, they can eat us. We have metal ships too. We are vulnerable. You cannot just attack a planet that defeated a superior force," Kale argued. "If we send a fleet, they might have more traps. The analysis shows their technology was primitive, but their strategy was insane. They do not care about survival. They care about victory." The council room fell silent. They watched the red dot on the map. They remembered the audio recordings from the Vorgith ships. The screaming, the panic, the sound of the metal dissolving. The humans had not tried to capture the ships. They did not try to steal the technology. They simply erased the enemy. The Record Keeper stood up. He walked to the window of the station and looked out at the stars. "I have studied the humans for a long time," he said. "They are a strange species. They are divided. They fight each other over land and ideas. But when an outsider threatens them, they become one mind. They become very, very dangerous." "Are they a threat to the galaxy?" Seraph asked. "Will they come for us?" The Record Keeper turned back to the table. "No, I do not think they want to conquer. If they wanted to conquer, they would keep the ships they destroyed. They would use the Vorgith technology to expand. But they destroyed it. They destroyed their own people to kill the enemy. They do not want to rule the galaxy. They won't be left alone." "So, what do we do?" Kale asked. "We cannot ignore them. The balance of power is broken. We give them what they want," the Record Keeper said, "and we protect ourselves." Back on Earth, Alex Mercer stood on a hill overlooking the ruins of New York City. Construction cranes were moving in the distance. He was older now. His hair had turned gray at the temples. He wore a simple uniform. The war was over, but his job was not done. Sarah Miller walked up the hill to join him. She held a tablet in her hand. She looked tired but happy to see him. "The cleanup is almost done," Sarah said. "We collected the last of the nanobots from the ocean. They are dormant now. We have them locked away." Alex nodded. "Good. And the signals?" "We are still broadcasting," Sarah said. "Every day we send the message into deep space, on all channels, in all languages." Alex looked up at the sky. "And what are we saying?" "We are saying, do not come here." In the Galactic Council chamber, the leaders made their decision. A new law was written. It was a simple law, but it carried great weight. The hologram of the galaxy changed. A black circle was drawn around the Sol system. From this day forward, the council leader announced, "The Sol system is a forbidden zone." The words appeared on the screen. Asterisk quarantined. Biological and technological hazard. Asterisk. No ship may enter the Earth system. The leader continued. No signal may be sent. Any ship that crosses the border will be turned back. If they refuse to leave, they will be destroyed by the Council Patrol, not to attack Earth, but to prevent the spread of the human madness. The members of the council agreed. They were afraid of the humans, but they also understood them. The humans had used a weapon that scared everyone. It was a weapon that could not be controlled. It was a weapon that did not stop until everything was gone. By isolating Earth, the galaxy hoped to contain that madness. On Earth, Alex and Sarah watched the sunset. The sky turned orange and purple. It was beautiful. Do you think they're listening? Sarah asked, the aliens out there? Do they understand why we did it? Alex put his hands in his pockets. I think they are listening. I think they heard the Vorga scream. They must think we are monsters, Sarah said softly. Maybe, Alex said, but we are alive, and the Vorgith are dead. In this universe, being a monster is better than being a slave. A year ago, the galaxy was noisy. Ships traveled everywhere. Traders, explorers, and conquerors moved freely. They thought Earth was just a primitive rock waiting to be taken. But now, the area around Earth was silent. No ships flew near it. No signals came out. It was a bubble of silence in a busy galaxy. The other races told stories about Earth. They told ghost stories. They told their children, behave or the humans will come. They spoke of the gray death that ate ships. They spoke of the crazy species that burned its own house down to kill the intruders. Earth became a legend. It became a warning. The record keeper wrote the final entry in the galactic history log. He typed slowly. Subject, humanity. Status, survivors. Threat level, extreme. Asterisk conclusion, do not disturb. They possess a ferocity that exceeds their technological level. They value freedom over life. They value revenge over resources. We will leave them in the dark. We will watch them from afar. And we will pray they never look up and want to leave. Asterisk. Alex Mercer turned away from the sunset. He walked back toward the bunker. The war was over, but the peace was a heavy, cold peace. Earth was alone in the dark, exactly how Alex wanted it. The galaxy fell silent around the blue planet. The engines of distant ships turned away. The eyes of the universe looked elsewhere. The counterattack had been so brutal that it taught the stars a lesson. Humanity was not to be messed with. The silence was not peace. It was fear. And in that fear, Earth was finally safe.